The evening at the Valmont estate in San Diego, California, was meant to be a night of celebration. The house, a modern masterpiece of glass and stone, sat on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Its expansive windows glowed, casting a warm light onto the cool, dark landscape. A fleet of sleek cars lined the circular drive, their headlights cutting through the twilight as more guests arrived. Inside, the open-concept living area was a symphony of gold and white. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead, and polished marble floors reflected the light. Long tables were laden with hors d'oeuvres prepared by celebrity chefs. Waiters in crisp black uniforms glided through the crowd, carrying flutes of champagne with bubbles that sparkled like a constellation. Julian Valmont, a tech mogul with influential ties in both San Francisco and Tokyo, had invited his closest friends, business partners, and a few political heavyweights to celebrate his wife Victoria's birthday. Julian was in his early 50s, a tall man with streaks of gray at his temples, but his voice resonated with the kind of authority that commanded a room. Victoria, wearing a stunning ruby-red gown, was a beacon of light as she welcomed guests. Her infectious laughter rose above the soft music. She had a way of making everyone feel seen and valued, no matter how reserved or nervous they were. Tonight, she truly was radiant. Yet, amid the opulence, no one seemed to notice the quiet woman moving discreetly in the background. Her name was Clara, a young Latina woman of 28. Her dark hair was neatly pulled back, her uniform was spotless, and her skin was smooth and olive-toned. The most remarkable thing about her were her eyes, calm, sharp, and observant. She missed nothing but never drew attention to herself. Her job was simple: care for Leo and Ava, keep the house running smoothly, and make sure everything was in its place. To the Valmonts, she was reliable and trustworthy. But to the children, 10-year-old Leo, curious and outgoing, and 8-year-old Ava, shy and sweet, Clara was much more than an employee. She was their comfort and their safe space, the person they sought out when they had a bad dream or when the world felt too overwhelming. In their eyes, she was family. As the evening began, Clara took Leo and Ava upstairs. From the second-floor balcony, they watched the party below. Ava tugged on Clara's hand. "You look pretty tonight, Clara," she whispered. Clara smiled gently. "Thank you, Ava. Now, remember to stay close to me. These parties can get a little too crowded." Leo leaned over the railing, his eyes wide. "Papa invited so many people. Do you think there will be cake soon?" Clara chuckled. "There is always cake at a birthday, Leo." Down below, Julian raised his glass, preparing to make a toast. The guests fell silent as he spoke warmly about his wife, her unwavering kindness, her patience, and how she had stood by him through all the ups and downs. Victoria's eyes glistened with tears as she smiled back at him. The crowd applauded, laughter returned, and the music swelled once more. Everything seemed perfect, but no one expected danger to crash the party. That night, as the driveway filled with cars and glasses clinked in the living room, 3 armed men in black clothing and masks slipped in through the back. They carried weapons that glinted under the faint garden lights. They moved quickly, forcing their way inside. The change in the atmosphere was immediate. Laughter died, screams erupted, and glasses shattered. A wave of panic swept through the hall as guests ducked, stumbled over chairs, and scrambled for cover. "Everybody down," one of the men shouted, waving his gun. "Nobody moves, or someone gets hurt." The robbers spread across the room, their voices sharp, their demands rising above the sudden silence. "Jewelry, watches, cash, empty your pockets now." Julian Valmont froze, his chest tight with fear. Victoria grabbed his arm, trembling, her face pale. Nearby, Leo and Ava cried out, pressing close to their mother, their small hands clutching her gown. Victoria tried to shield them, but terror had taken over. Yet in the middle of the storm, Clara did not panic. Her instincts kicked in before her mind even had a chance. She pulled Leo and Ava close, crouching low and whispering into their ears. "Stay with me. Don't move. I will keep you safe." Her voice was soft but firm, an anchor in the chaos. The children clung to her, burying their faces in her arms. One of the robbers noticed her in the corner. "You there," he barked, pointing his gun in her direction. "Bring those kids here." Gasps filled the room. Victoria let out a cry, and Julian shouted, "No, leave them alone." His voice was strained, but the robber ignored him, stepping closer. But Clara didn't move. She stood tall, her dark eyes fixed on the man. She didn't tremble, didn't cry, and didn't beg. Her voice was steady and controlled. "You're nervous," she said slowly. The room fell silent at her words. "Your hands are shaking. You don't want to hurt anyone tonight. Don't make a mistake." The robber hesitated for a moment, thrown off by her composure. No one had ever spoken to him like that. People stared at Clara in shock. To them, she was just the quiet maid in the background. Yet, here she was, showing more courage than anyone else in the room. But the robbers were growing impatient. One of them grabbed a guest by the collar and pressed his gun to the man's temple. "We're not here to play," he shouted, his voice cracking with rage. "Give us the money or people start dying." The crowd whimpered in fear. Julian's hands trembled as he tried to speak, offering money, anything to make them stop. Victoria clutched her children tighter, tears streaming down her face. But Clara gently pulled the children behind her, shielding them with her body. Her eyes narrowed. Something in her had shifted. When the robber with the gun moved closer, swinging it carelessly toward the crowd, Clara acted. In a single, fluid motion, she stepped forward, seized his wrist, and twisted it sharply. The gun clattered to the floor. Before he could react, she kicked it across the room, far out of reach. Gasps filled the air. No one had ever seen her move like that. The second robber rushed at her, fury in his eyes. Clara spun, using his momentum against him, and slammed him onto the polished floor. He groaned in pain, his mask slipping sideways. Guests screamed again, not from fear this time, but from sheer disbelief. The third robber hesitated, his gun raised, but Clara's eyes locked onto his. "Don't do it," she warned, her voice low but commanding. "I promise you, you won't win tonight." His hands shook. He tried to steady the gun, but Clara was already moving. She closed the distance in seconds, twisting his arm until the weapon fell. She shoved him down, pinning him effortlessly. In less than a minute, 3 armed men who had terrorized a mansion full of people were helpless on the floor. The room was silent, broken only by the heavy breathing of frightened guests. Julian stared at Clara, his mouth agape. Victoria sobbed quietly, her arms still wrapped around Leo and Ava, who peeked out at Clara with wide, astonished eyes. Clara stood tall, breathing steadily, her composure unbroken. She had revealed a hidden part of herself. She was no ordinary maid. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police arrived minutes later, swarming the mansion. They dragged the robbers away in handcuffs, still groaning from the blows Clara had delivered. Statements were taken, questions asked, but everyone pointed to the same person. "She saved us," one guest said. "She fought them all," another added. "She's not just a maid," Victoria whispered, tears running down her cheeks. When the last officer left, the mansion was quiet again. Broken glass glittered on the floor, and the faint smell of fear lingered in the air. But the Valmont family couldn't look away from Clara. Julian finally spoke, his voice low and full of awe. "Who are you?" Clara lowered her eyes. She looked almost ashamed, as if revealing her strength was something she never meant to do. She spoke softly. "Before I came here, I was a Marine in the United States military. I was trained for situations like this. I never wanted anyone to know. I came here to live quietly, to take care of your children, to find peace after so much war. The room grew heavy with emotion. Victoria covered her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. Leo and Ava clung to Clara's hands, looking up at her with a new kind of reverence. Julian stepped closer, his voice shaking. You risked your life for us, for my children, for Victoria, for everyone here. You didn't have to. You could have run, but you didn't. Clara shook her head slowly. I couldn't run. Not with 2 innocent children behind me. Not when I knew I could stop them. Her voice wavered now, a hint of pain hidden beneath her strength. I've seen too many people die in front of me. I couldn't let it happen again. For a long moment, no one spoke. The remaining guests looked at her with deep respect, some even with tears in their eyes. She was no longer just the maid in the background. She was the woman who had saved them all. Victoria finally stepped forward. She wrapped her arms around Clara tightly, sobbing against her shoulder. Your family now, she whispered. You'll always be family. We owe you everything. Leo and Ava joined the embrace, their little arms circling her waist. Leo whispered, You're our hero, Clara. Julian's eyes glistened as he placed a hand on her shoulder. You've taught me something tonight. I always thought courage came from power, from money, from control. But real courage, it's in sacrifice. It's in love. It's in people like you. That night ended with tears, gratitude, and a heavy lesson. Everyone in that room walked away changed. They had come for a party but left with a story they would never forget. Clara sat quietly by herself later, her heart heavy but calm. She had revealed her secret, the life she had wanted to leave behind. But maybe, she thought, it was meant to happen. Maybe the children and their family needed to see her for who she truly was. And the Valmont family never again looked at her as just a maid. To them, she became the embodiment of courage and discipline. A woman who risked everything not for glory but for love. The story spread in whispers and retellings, how a young maid had stood against armed robbers and saved a millionaire's family. But to Clara, it wasn't about fame. It was about protecting what mattered most. And in that, she found a new sense of peace. Life went on, but the lesson remained, sometimes the people we overlook, the ones we take for granted, hold the greatest strength of all. The aftermath was both chaos and quiet. The police had gone, and the last of the shaken guests had been ushered out. Julian and Victoria insisted on calling a cleaning crew, but for now, the family remained in the hushed, broken glass-filled living room. The grand, polished space, so recently a stage for celebration, now felt like a battlefield. But in the center of it, the quiet stillness of Clara was a source of peace. Julian, still reeling from the events, couldn't shake the image of her. The quiet, calm woman who had served his family with such gentle grace had moved with the brutal efficiency of a warrior. We need to talk, he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. About your past. About everything. Clara nodded. There was no going back now. The secret she had held so tightly was out. She sat down on a nearby sofa, her hands resting calmly in her lap. Leo and Ava, who had not let go of her hand since the robbers were taken away, sat on either side of her, looking up at their parents with a quiet defiance. They knew they had been protected by their hero, and they weren't about to let her go. Julian and Victoria listened as Clara spoke of her life before them. She told them about her tours of duty, the grueling training, and the difficult choices she had faced. She spoke of the camaraderie and the deep sense of duty, but also of the exhaustion and the scars, both visible and hidden. She had left the military not from fear, but from a profound need for quiet, a desire to trade a world of combat for one of nurturing. She had chosen a life of service in a different way, finding a new purpose in the simple, profound act of caring for 2 children. I didn't want the hero's life anymore, she explained, her voice barely a whisper. I just wanted to be a guardian. Not a soldier. Victoria's eyes filled with tears again, but this time, they were tears of understanding and admiration. She and Julian had always valued Clara for her reliability and kindness, but they had never truly seen her. Now, they saw the immense strength and sacrifice that lay beneath her quiet exterior. The next morning, the mansion felt different. The broken glass was gone, the floors were spotless, and the air was no longer thick with fear. But the most significant change was the family's relationship with Clara. Julian offered her a new role in the household, something more than a caregiver, something that reflected the trust and respect he now had for her. He spoke of security, of managing their safety, of having her by his side. Clara, however, gently shook her head. "I appreciate it, Mr. Valmont," she said. "But that's not why I'm here. I came here to be with the children. That's the only job I want." Julian and Victoria looked at each other and understood. For Clara, the true victory wasn't in the fight, but in the peace she had found with their family. She didn't want a promotion or a change in title. She wanted the quiet life she had chosen, a life where her strength was used not for war, but for love. And so, life at the Valmont estate continued. But the dynamic had shifted forever. The family no longer saw Clara as just an employee. She was a confidant to Victoria, a trusted advisor to Julian, and most importantly, the unwavering anchor for Leo and Ava. Her heroic act had not only saved them but had also deepened their bond, turning a formal arrangement into an unbreakable family. The whispers of her bravery spread, but to the Valmonts, she was simply Clara, their quiet guardian, their hero. News of the incident spread like wildfire, first through the elite circles of San Diego, then into the local headlines. The story was a sensation: ex-Marine Maid saves tech mogul's family from armed robbers. Journalists clamored for interviews, and photographers staked out the estate, hoping for a glimpse of the unlikely hero. Julian, with his vast network and public relations team, managed to keep the media at bay. He was fiercely protective of Clara, recognizing that her wish for privacy was paramount. He issued a single statement, praising her as a true hero, and confirming that his family was safe thanks to her bravery. He didn't offer any details about her past, ensuring the press had no more than the basic facts. Inside the estate, life had found a new rhythm. Leo and Ava, who had always adored Clara, now looked at her with a mix of love and awe. Their nightly ritual of a bedtime story had changed slightly. Now, after listening to a tale of princes and dragons, Leo would ask, "Did you ever have to fight a dragon, Clara?" She would smile, a soft, tired expression that only they saw. "Not a real one, Leo. But some of the bad guys I fought felt just as scary." Ava would then hug her tighter, her small arms wrapped around Clara's neck. "Thank you for being our knight, Clara." It was a quiet kind of fame, one confined to the walls of the Valmont home. The family made a silent promise to one another: they would honor Clara's sacrifice not with public praise, but with private gratitude. They would never take her for granted again. Julian and Victoria made it clear that her security, her well-being, and her peace of mind were now their top priority. They installed state-of-the-art security systems and hired an additional security detail, but Julian's focus was always on her. He offered to set up a trust for her, to pay for any future education she might want, or to help her start a business. Clara, in her typical fashion, accepted their generosity with grace but maintained her quiet dignity. She chose to invest in her future, starting an online course in child psychology. She wanted to be even better for the children who had become her world. The money, the fame, the power, none of it mattered to her. Her reward was the trust in the children's eyes and the respect in Julian and Victoria's. One evening, Julian found her sitting on the balcony, looking out at the endless expanse of the ocean. He sat beside her, the air between them comfortable and silent. "You know," he said softly, "you really are a remarkable woman, Clara. You saved our lives, but you also showed us what's truly important. It's not about the wealth we have, but the people we keep safe." Clara looked at him, her calm eyes reflecting the moonlight on the water. "I just did what I had to do," she said. Julian shook his head. "No," he insisted. "You did more than that. You chose to protect us when you could have chosen to save yourself. That's a lesson we'll carry forever." He placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of profound respect. The Valmonts had come to understand that their greatest asset was not in their bank accounts or their properties, but in the heart of the woman who had traded a life of battle for a life of love. And in that home, Clara found the peace she had been searching for all along. She had left one uniform behind, only to find another, one that was not for a soldier, but for a guardian of a family she now called her own. As weeks turned into months, the public frenzy died down, but the profound shift within the Valmont family remained. For Clara, the true victory wasn't the defeat of the robbers, but the blossoming of a new, deeper relationship. She no longer saw herself as an employee but as an integral part of their family. One afternoon, Victoria found Clara teaching Ava and Leo a series of simple self-defense moves in the backyard. The children, giggling with excitement, learned how to stand their ground, how to find balance, and how to use their voice as their first defense. Victoria watched, a quiet smile on her face. This was a different kind of strength, not one of violence, but of empowerment. Julian, true to his word, had quietly established a foundation in Clara's honor, dedicated to providing support and training for veterans transitioning back to civilian life. He named it the Clara Foundation, a tribute to her quiet courage. Clara was uncomfortable with the public recognition at first, but Julian explained, "It's not about fame, Clara. It's about giving others the same second chance you found. It's about honoring the quiet strength that people like you bring to the world." Clara agreed to serve as a consultant, helping to shape the programs and ensure they focused on holistic healing and purpose-driven work. She found a new kind of satisfaction in helping others navigate the journey she had already walked. She spoke not of combat, but of courage, not of loss, but of resilience. The Valmont home, once a symbol of wealth and power, was now a sanctuary of gratitude and respect. Julian and Victoria had come to see that the greatest riches weren't tangible. They were found in the deep, unwavering trust of a woman who chose to protect their family, not out of duty, but out of love. The children thrived under her watchful, caring eyes, learning that true heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes, they are the quiet, steady people who stand with you in the darkest moments. And for Clara, the estate on the cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean was no longer just a place of employment. It was home. She had traded the chaos of her past for a life of purpose, finding peace not by running from her strength, but by using it to nurture and protect the family who had opened their hearts to her. Her story was a reminder that courage isn't always loud, sometimes, it's the most powerful force in the quietest of hearts.